The boardroom of Harrington Tech on the 52nd floor of a gleaming Manhattan tower fell into absolute silence the moment Angela Harrington rose from her seat. "Bonnie Ellis is the traitor who leaked our proprietary AI algorithms to Nexus Dynamics," she said, her voice steady and ice-cold as she slid printed emails across the polished oak table. Every executive turned to stare at the young woman seated at the far end, the one who had climbed from a Brooklyn walk up to this room on nothing but raw talent and late nights. Bonnie's face drained of color, her hands tightening around the edge of her chair until her knuckles went white. She had spent the last 18 months pouring her soul into the very project now being used against her. And in that single accusation she watched her entire future collapse. No one in the room knew the emails were forged, the timestamps altered by someone with access to the company's server. Someone who had chosen ambition over the quiet pull, she felt every time their eyes met in the elevator. Angela kept her expression neutral while her pulse hammered in her ears. She had rehearsed this moment for weeks, telling herself it was the only way to survive. Her father, Victor Harrington, had made it clear. The next CEO would be the one who delivered the cleanest victory, not the one who hesitated. Bonnie's breakthrough in predictive modeling had already drawn board attention, and worse, it had made Angela feel things she could not afford. Late-night conversations that lingered too long, shared coffees that felt like confessions. Love was a liability in this world. So she had planted the evidence at 2 a.m. 3 nights ago, using the admin privileges her last name granted her. The board voted unanimously within minutes. Security escorted Bonnie out past the glass walls while cameras flashed from the hallway. By evening the story was everywhere. Rising star exposed as corporate spy. Bonnie's apartment door was locked behind her the next morning. Her bank account frozen pending investigation, and every recruiter in the city suddenly unavailable. She sat on the edge of her bed in the dark, replaying Angela's face in the boardroom, searching for any flicker of regret she knew would never come. Angela stood alone on the rooftop terrace that same night, city lights blurring below her. The victory felt hollow. She had eliminated the threat, secured her path to the top. Yet the memory of Bonnie's stunned eyes refused to fade. "It was necessary," she whispered to the wind, but the words tasted like ash. 3 years stretched ahead, and neither woman understood yet how completely that single decision would rewrite both their lives. The weeks that followed were a blur of legal filings and media storms. Bonnie's public defender advised her to plead down, but she refused, insisting on her innocence even as the forged evidence piled up. Angela watched from the executive floor as the stock price climbed on news of the successful purge. She threw herself into meetings, acquisitions, and press conferences, smiling for cameras while her nights filled with restless dreams of a woman she had destroyed. Bonnie, meanwhile, packed what little she owned into a duffel bag and took a Greyhound to a cousin's couch in Queens. She worked double shifts at a coffee shop by day and coded open-source projects by night, determined to rebuild from zero. Every headline that mentioned her name felt like a fresh wound, but she refused to let it break her completely. The spark between them, though buried under layers of betrayal and silence, still flickered somewhere neither could reach. By the end of the first year, Angela had been named interim CEO. The board praised her decisiveness. Her father toasted her at family dinners, proud of the daughter who had learned to make the hard calls. Yet in quiet moments she found herself searching social media for any trace of Bonnie, only to close the tabs in frustration. Bonnie, surviving on freelance gigs and sheer stubbornness, had started a tiny consulting side hustle from a shared workspace in Brooklyn. She told herself the past was dead, that the woman who had smiled at her across conference tables was gone forever. Neither realized the lie they had both swallowed would one day demand its full price. The second year brought colder realities. Angela's father suffered a stroke, and the board quietly pressured her to prove she could run the empire alone. She doubled down on aggressive tactics, hostile takeovers, layoffs framed as streamlining, while the guilt she had buried began to surface in unexpected ways. She turned down every blind date her friends arranged, claiming the company demanded all her focus. In truth, no one else's presence filled the hollow space Bonnie had left. Late one night she reopened the old project files, reading Bonnie's elegant code annotations until her eyes burned. "You were always better than me at this," she muttered to the empty office, then slammed the laptop shut. Bonnie's life had settled into a grim rhythm. She had scraped together enough to rent a studio above a bodega, teaching herself new programming languages and landing small contracts with nonprofits. Her reputation was still poisoned in big tech, but word of mouth among indie developers slowly built a fragile network. One evening she received an anonymous email offering a lead on a rival firm in San Francisco. She almost deleted it, convinced it was another trap, but desperation won. The job interview happened over video. She nailed it. Within weeks she was on a plane west, carrying nothing but a backpack and the quiet vow that one day she would clear her name. The city by the bay felt like a second chance. Foggy mornings, steep hills, and a startup scene hungry for fresh ideas. She poured every waking hour into a new predictive analytics tool that could rival Harrington's flagship product. Colleagues noticed her intensity but never learned the source. Back in New York, Angela sensed the shift without understanding it. Harrington Tech's market share began to slip in subtle ways. Lost bids, delayed patents. She ordered internal audits, tightened security, yet the leaks continued. Her father, recovering but frail, warned her that weakness at the top invited predators. She smiled tightly and promised results. Inside, the old ache sharpened. She started keeping a locked drawer with a single printed photo from the company picnic 3 years earlier. Bonnie laughing at something Angela had whispered. She never opened the drawer, but she knew it was there. By the end of year 2, Bonnie's prototype had caught the attention of venture capitalists. She rebranded her small operation as Ellis Dynamics and secured seed funding. The irony was not lost on her. The name she had once been proud to build now carried the weight of scandal, yet she refused to change it. In quiet moments she allowed herself to wonder what Angela was doing. Whether the heiress ever regretted the choice that had cost them both so much. She pushed the thought away each time. Survival demanded focus. Love was a luxury she could no longer afford. Angela, meanwhile, began to crack under the pressure. A board member quietly suggested she step aside for a more experienced executive. She fought back with cold precision, firing the doubters' allies and restructuring departments overnight. The company bled talent, but the stock stabilized. Still, she lay awake at night replaying the boardroom scene, imagining what might have happened if she had chosen differently, if she had defended Bonnie instead of destroying her. The possibility terrified her more than failure ever could. 3 years to the day after the accusation, Bonnie stood on a stage in San Francisco presenting Ellis Dynamics' new AI platform to a packed conference hall. The product was elegant, faster, and cheaper than anything Harrington Tech had released. Investors clapped. Journalists scribbled notes. For the first time since the scandal, her name appeared in headlines again. This time as the comeback kid. She smiled for the cameras, but inside she felt only a fierce satisfaction mixed with something sharper. She had rebuilt everything they had taken from her. And now she was ready to challenge the empire that had tried to erase her. In New York, Angela watched the live stream in her corner office, the same one that had once belonged to her father. The screen showed Bonnie, older, sharper, radiant with quiet confidence, fielding questions with the same precision that had once impressed her. Angela's hand trembled as she paused the video on a close-up of Bonnie's face. The guilt she had buried for 36 months rose like a tide. Internal reports confirmed the threat. Ellis Dynamics was courting Harrington's biggest clients. If the board learned how deeply Angela had been involved in the original framing, her position would evaporate overnight. She closed the laptop and stared out at the skyline, realizing for the first time that survival might require a different kind of sacrifice. That same week, an old Harrington engineer who had retired to Florida contacted Bonnie through a secure channel. He had discovered archived server logs showing the forged timestamps originated from Angela's personal terminal. He offered the evidence without asking for payment, saying only that he was tired of watching good people pay for other people's ambition. Bonnie sat in her apartment for hours staring at the files, heart hammering. Proof. Real proof after 3 years of silence. She could destroy Angela's career with a single press release. The thought brought no joy, only a hollow ache that felt dangerously like the old attraction. Angela received an unmarked envelope at her penthouse the following Monday. Inside were printed copies of the same logs, along with a single line typed on plain paper. "We need to talk. B." She recognized the handwriting instantly. For the first time in years, fear and hope collided in her chest. She canceled every meeting for the rest of the week and booked a private jet to San Francisco. The reunion happened in a small cafe overlooking the bay, far from prying eyes. Bonnie arrived first, dressed in a simple black blazer that still carried the ghost of the office attire she once wore. Angela walked in wearing sunglasses and a coat that cost more than Bonnie's entire apartment. They sat across from each other without speaking for a long minute. Then Bonnie slid the folder across the table. "You did this. You ruined me to save yourself." Angela did not deny it. Instead, she met Bonnie's eyes and said the words she had practiced in 1,000 sleepless nights. "I was terrified of how much I needed you. Love felt like surrender. So I chose power." The cafe noise faded around them. For the first time since the boardroom, both women allowed themselves to feel the full weight of what had been lost. The conversation stretched into the evening and spilled onto the waterfront promenade. Angela confessed every detail: the forged emails, the late-night server access, the way she had watched Bonnie's life collapse from afar and done nothing. Bonnie listened without interruption. Tears she refused to shed burning behind her eyes. When Angela finally stopped speaking, Bonnie asked the only question that mattered. "Why are you telling me now?" Angela's answer was simple and devastating. "Because I'm losing the company anyway. And because I never stopped loving you." The word hung between them like a live wire. 3 years of silence, betrayal, and survival had not killed the feeling. It had only sharpened it. They walked for hours, trading truths neither had ever voiced aloud. Bonnie described the night she had slept on friends' couches, the panic attacks before job interviews, the way she had taught herself to stop checking Harrington news. Angela admitted the drawer with the old photo, the way she had turned down every potential partner because no one else measured up to a memory. They did not touch. The city lights reflected on the water while each woman weighed the cost of forgiveness against the cost of continued war. By midnight they stood at the edge of a pier, wind tugging at their coats. Bonnie spoke first. "I could destroy you tomorrow. The evidence is ironclad." Angela nodded. "I know. And I would deserve it." Bonnie turned to face her. "But I don't want your empire. I want the truth between us." Angela reached out slowly, giving Bonnie every chance to pull away. Their fingers brushed, then laced together. The contact felt like coming home after a war. The next weeks were a carefully choreographed dance of strategy and emotion. Bonnie shared the logs only with Angela, who used them to trace every alteration back to her own terminal. Together they drafted a plan. Angela would call an emergency board meeting, confess the framing as a grave error in judgment, and step down as CEO. Bonnie would publicly clear her name and offer a merger between Ellis Dynamics and the remnants of Harrington Tech under new leadership. The personal cost would be enormous. Angela would lose her inheritance, her family name would be tarnished, and the media would feast on the scandal. Yet both women understood the alternative was continued lies and separate lives of quiet regret. Late one night in Bonnie's apartment, Angela finally asked the question that had haunted her for 3 years. "If we do this, if we tell the world everything, will you still want me?" Bonnie's answer came without hesitation. "I never stopped." They sat on the couch, shoulders touching, and for the first time allowed themselves to imagine a future that included both love and truth. The board meeting in New York became the turning point. Angela stood at the head of the long table, the same table where she had once destroyed Bonnie's career, and read a prepared statement admitting the forgery, the planted evidence, and the motive of personal ambition. Gasps rippled through the room. Board members demanded explanations. Lawyers scribbled furiously. Angela remained calm, revealing only the necessary facts while protecting Bonnie's name until the right moment. By the end of the hour she had tendered her resignation and transferred her voting shares to an independent trustee. The stock dropped 23% before the closing bell. Bonnie watched the live stream from San Francisco, heart in her throat. When Angela finished speaking, Bonnie released her own statement through Ellis Dynamics. The evidence proving her innocence, the offer of a merger, and a single line that changed everything. "After 3 years of silence, Angela Harrington and I are no longer adversaries. We are partners in every sense." The internet exploded. Headlines screamed, "Heiress confesses corporate fraud. Romance with former victim revealed." Paparazzi camped outside both women's doors. Victor Harrington publicly disowned his daughter in a terse press release. Old colleagues called Bonnie offering apologies. Others called Angela with threats. Through it all, the two women spoke every night on video, anchoring each other against the storm. The first public appearance came at a neutral press conference in a midtown hotel. They walked in side by side, hands not quite touching until the cameras rolled. Bonnie spoke first, detailing the framing and the years of struggle with quiet dignity. Angela followed, owning every mistake and expressing genuine remorse. Then, in a moment that would be replayed millions of times, Angela turned to Bonnie and said simply, "I love you. I should have chosen you then. I choose you now." Bonnie's eyes filled but her voice stayed steady. "And I love you. We lost 3 years. We won't lose another day." They did not kiss for the cameras, some boundaries still felt too raw, but the way they looked at each other left no doubt. The lesbian love story that had been hidden beneath corporate warfare was now front-page news across the country. Backlash was immediate and brutal. Conservative investors pulled funding. Tabloids dug for dirt. Angela's extended family cut all contact. Yet new allies appeared. Other women in tech who had hidden their own relationships. Activists who saw the couple as symbols of resilience. Ellis Dynamics stock surged on the merger announcement. The combined company would be led by a neutral CEO with both women on the advisory board, ensuring neither ambition nor love could again override ethics. 6 months after the press conference, the merged company, now called Horizon United, held its first all-hands meeting in a sunlit auditorium. Angela and Bonnie sat in the front row as equals, no longer heiress and victim but two women who had chosen each other over empires. The new CEO outlined aggressive ethical guidelines, crediting the pair for forcing the culture change. Later, walking through the same Manhattan streets where everything had begun, they stopped at the entrance to the old Harrington building. Angela looked up at the tower she had once ruled. "I don't miss it," she said quietly. Bonnie squeezed her hand. "I never wanted it. I only ever wanted you." They had paid dearly. Lost family, lost privacy, lost years, but the life they built together felt unbreakable. Bonnie's predictive platform now helped nonprofits predict funding needs. Angela used her remaining contacts to mentor young women climbing corporate ladders. Their relationship remained private in the ways that mattered. Quiet dinners, weekend hikes, late-night coding sessions where ideas flowed freely between them. The world still watched, still speculated. But the two women had learned that survival and love were not mutually exclusive when honesty replaced calculation. On the anniversary of the original accusation, they returned to the waterfront cafe in San Francisco, where the truth had finally surfaced. Sitting at the same table, Angela asked the question that had lingered since the beginning. Was it worth it? All the pain, the loss, the destruction. Bonnie looked across at the woman she had once been framed by and now loved openly. She smiled softly and answered without hesitation. Every single day. Was their love truly worth the price of betrayal and ambition?